Hello everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar, StayNTouch Product Enhancements, version 5.38, Guest to Pay Balance Calculation updated, additional date ranges added to scheduled reports, and more, presented by StayNTouch Technical Sales Engineer Aldrich Schultz. I'm your host, Erin Fisher, the content writer here at StayNTouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of StayNTouch Cloud PMS, version 5.38 product release. In this webinar, we will highlight how the Wallet tab is now streamlined for all cards, demonstrate how preferences can now be deselected from the guest card, illustrate additional date ranges added for a year for select scheduled reports, review primary external reference number added to reservation and stays data spaces for custom exports, and explain how guest to pay balance now excludes taxes when the tax exempt toggle is enabled. We will have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will answer them in the order they are received at the end. And that's all I have right now. Aldrich, I'm going to hand the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Erin, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And in today's demonstration, we're going to take a look at all of the product enhancements that have been released for version 5.38. We're going to go ahead and start out with an addition to the guest card. I'm going to actually go into a couple of our other different cards, because as some of our users will notice that in our company and travel agent cards, we have created a space called the wallet where you can house payment details for credit cards. So as I go to, let's say, one of our companies that we have, and I access the company card, I can see here that we have a tab for wallet. And again, this is where you can house different payment methods for that particular device. If we go into now our guest card, and I'll go ahead and look up my reservation. I'll go into the reservation and then to the card. And you'll now see that our guest cards will house the wallet tab so that it will actually be in sync with what's going on in the other card types. So in the travel agent card, in the company card, now so in the guest card, you will have the wallet tab that will house the payment information for your guests. Okay. Next, we're going to take a look at some other features on the guest card, and that's going to include areas in the bill. So if we go back to the reservation, we're going to take a look at your tax exempt feature, and that will be, of course, in our additional settings here. So if we go into our additional details, we're actually able to see the tax exempt option. Of course, this has been available to us, but we can also see a guest balance here. Okay. If we are to click the guest balance to activate it and then choose, of course, one of our tax types, we'll say that we'll have all tax. Okay. This is going to actually change how much the guest is responsible for paying. Now let's actually demonstrate this in a new reservation where you'll be able to see the differences. So I'll quickly create a reservation for the day for one of our rates. Okay. Go ahead and add a payment method onto the reservation, and we'll confirm. Let's go to the stay card, and we can see here that the guest to pay balance is going to be $272.50. Again, if we're going to activate the tax exempt and choose our tax type, we can see that the amount has now changed to $250. That's because the guest will only be responsible for paying the room amount, excluding the tax type that we've selected. Okay. Again, we can deselect that, and you can see that the price or the amount that the guest is going to pay has increased back to $272.50. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of our reporting features that we've enhanced. And I'll go to my menu here, and we'll go down to reports. The first thing we're going to take a look at is going to be the different enhancements to the date range that we've included on some of our reports. And that's going to include some reports like business on the books. So we can actually go to schedule a report. And we'll do a new report here and scroll down to business on the books. So with our reporting, we've actually added additional date ranges that will include the current year and next 365 days. So if we look at the time period and scroll down, we can see that at the bottom, we've added current year as well as next 365 days. So these are going to give you two additional options for how you can create and schedule these reports for to contain the data that will include the current year that you're in, as well as the next 365 days. This will also include reports like the forecast, as well as forecast guests and groups. So you will be able to utilize that functionality and option on each of those different reports. Okay. The next enhancement we're going to take a look at is going to be in custom reports, custom exports, my apologies. And it's going to be for the external reference number housed on the reservations. Now, let me go back to the reservation so I can detail that to you. So if we take a look at the reservation, there is a space, of course, on the stay card that will house the external reference number, which is the reference number that is passed on to the PMS from the CRS or channel manager. Okay, so your CRS number, any of those booking reference numbers that come from your external channels that actually feed into the PMS. Okay, so you'll see the reference number is here for your external reference. We've added that as a selectable field now in our custom exports. So if we go travel back to exports, and we can take a look at custom, and we're going to look at the new reservation export. And these are going to be, of course, our selectable fields here. And if we scroll down, we're going to now see an option to select for external system reference. As well, we'll have the option to select for external system. These are now going to be labels that you can custom label or order in whichever way you'd like. We also have the option to add filters, which will include additional options for these items. Okay, So we can set things like select a field, and then an option. Oh, my apologies. And then you'll have external system listed in there so that you can actually use the external system as a filter option for your external report. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look as well in stays. There's also stay data that will also include the additional selectable fields for external system and external system reference. Okay. Now, we did have a portion of the webinar carved out for, again, some profile details. So we'll go ahead and take a look back at the reservation and go into the reservation itself and our guest card here that we can pull down the tab on and go to our likes and preferences. Now, prior to the 5.38 release, there were some items that you would be able to select within the preferences and likes on the guest card that you were not able to deselect. So now we have the option to select either option or unselect or deselect that option if it is no longer a preference of the guest. Okay, so as we can see here, high floor, low floor, I can either switch back and forth or deselect it altogether. In terms of the elevator, if we're going to be near or away from the elevator, I can either switch that preference or deselect the preference altogether if it's something that the guest no longer wishes to represent on the guest card. Okay. And that is going to conclude the demonstration of our enhancements for version 5.38. We do have a section of this presentation carved out for questions. So if we do have any questions, we are happy to answer those for you now.
Yep, thank you, Aldrich. And as Aldrich said, I'd now like to take over the floor for questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. So I don't see any questions right now. I'll give everyone a few seconds to enter those. All right, since there are no questions, I'd like to take to the floor to offer some final thoughts. So today we highlighted how the wallet tab is now streamlined for all cards, demonstrated how preferences can now be deselected from the guest card, illustrated additional date ranges added for a year for select scheduled reports, reviewed primary external reference number added to reservation and stays data spaces for custom exports, and explained how guest to pay balance excludes taxes when the tax exempt toggle is enabled. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for coming, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at erin.fisher@StayNTouch.com. Thanks again.